I'm Nadeem Mazin. I came to Cambridge, Greater Boston, to go to MIT a little over a decade ago, and then after MIT, started a few businesses in Central Square, a laser cutting and 3D printing business, and a design, animation, film, and software business. Two separate businesses employ some, actually one SMFA grad and some other local 20-something artists. My class, Creative Futures Business Essentials for Artists, is an experiential, hands-on approach to business, and I think it's the only way to learn business, and it's especially predisposed to how artists learn. They're coming from studio courses, they're learning hands-on, and it turns out that learning in that way is a huge advantage when you start looking at business and start looking at the question, how can we leverage our passions to make money doing what we love? Which is a totally foreign concept to almost anyone in the world. I think, I think people who do what they love every single day are considered an anomaly in the marketplace, and if you're making money doing what you love, then that's even more rare, but it doesn't have to be that way. And to that end, each of our guest lecturers emphasizes through example that you can be an artist without starving. This is Amanda Palmer of the Dresden Dolls and later of one of the most popular music Kickstarters of all time, $1 million Kickstarter for music release engagement she was doing. And she came into the class and tested her TED Talk on us. It's a TED Talk about vulnerability, about depending on others, and about finding resources within your local community. It's a great TED Talk, and I would look it up. You familiar with the TED Talks? Technology, education, design. If you aren't, you'll love them. This is exactly the type of content that I think your children and your families will love. And having a TED talker come to the class was incredible. Let's see. Learning occurs spontaneously through collaboration and experimentation. And in our class, as we'll see in the later slides, people are encouraged to fail. They're encouraged to start a business or brand. And the purpose of the class is to follow the business or brand that each student creates along the course of the 15 weeks that we're together. And there's mentorship from me and from other successful business owners, but there's also the kind of brute force method of getting your business off the ground. It's expanding your exposure through social media. It's going out and doing cold calls. It's approaching strangers on the street and getting them to come to your launch event. It's a whole lot of the humdrum and the exciting parts of a business that no one teaches you, even in an MBA program. And kind of through jumping in and getting into it over the course of those 15 weeks, I think people come away with a lot of workable knowledge, from how to do your taxes and run your books to really how much extra time it takes on a daily basis to get your business off the ground while you're still trying to manage all of your art and all of the creative side of whatever your business is. One of the interesting realizations that I think runs counter to how parents see their children and how Americans see their artists is that artists can be quantitative. And when you start your business off the ground, you start doing something that you love, all of a sudden this is a dopeness legend. Dopeness is like coolness or whatever. Just translating in case there's a generation gap here. And one student said, well, here's the things I know how to do. She had a lot of different vocations. She was a graphic designer and a consultant and a still life photographer and all these things. And each one of these graphs will tell you how much time she's spending on it, how much money she's making at each one of these things, and how much she likes it. And when you look at how much she likes something versus how much money she's making and how much time she's spending, she can optimize for the one where she's making a lot of money, not spending a lot of time, but she loves it. And she found a great happy medium that's super dope and at the same time exactly what the market wants. As much as I encourage something like this completely was a self-starting activity and part of her final presentation. And I think artists are drawn to this type of critical thinking just because of how arts education works. It's a critical and self-critical, iterative process. And when you apply that to business, all of a sudden, hey, lo and behold, there's numbers and there's quantitative methods involved. Is kind of eye-opening for them and possibly for many people who don't see the relationship between numbers and art. Okay, you with me? Okay, great. And here's another slide. This is a soft sculpture student who took her soft sculptures and did market testing, started calling around the country. Those little dots are how many people she called in each locale. And then she related both those cold calls and the feedback from that project to her social media engagement. And here's where she did a lot of social media engagement and got a lot of views. And here's where she had midterms and had half the views. You know, and just quantitative feedback like that is super easy with the social media that your kids are using every day. They're using Facebook, they're using Twitter, they're using Instagram. And it turns out that those things lend themselves towards exposure, towards business, towards quantitative modeling. Okay. Fast failure and the studio critique model are a competitive advantage in business. And one wouldn't think so, I think, from the outside, but when an artist goes into business, a lot of the things that they already know seem very familiar, and they would otherwise be daunting to a non-artist. Artists are exposed to crushing failure and insecurity, and I think that people who go into business realize that that's part and parcel of the gig. And you kind of become resilient to the feedback and resilient to the failure. And in fact, incubators, tech incubators, software incubators like Techstars will encourage you to fail fast. It costs less to get your bad ideas out of the way quickly. It costs less emotionally, it costs less financially. And then all of a sudden you find yourself moving into the good ideas, into the great ideas. And you know, life didn't slap you, it just high-fived you in the face. The fact that artists will come out of knowing how to do that with their art, knowing how to do that with their peers, and still maintaining emotional and psychological resilience is great when they come into business, and all of a sudden it's not their colleagues, but it's their customers or it's their market space that is posing challenges, and they're resilient to those challenges. And throughout the course of the 15 weeks, we have a lot of failures. We encourage fast failure, but by the end, we have people going above and beyond to succeed. Which brings me to our pop-up challenge. I gave the students this challenge so that they would fail. I said we have 2 weeks to start a pop-up gallery, and I didn't tell them that they would fail. I just said we have 2 weeks to start a pop-up gallery. I actually asked them first, if you had a gallery, would you display your art? And they said, yes, we need more places to display our art. And I said, fine, now we're going to do it. I'm going to hold you to it. And almost immediately they said, well, if this is going to become a real thing, I have to tell you, we've done pop-up galleries before. They take months of planning. There's no way this is going to be a success. And all of a sudden, they went out to their peers. They went out to strangers. They went out to potential attendees. They got the attendees in. They got donations for the cost of setting up the gallery. They got donations for the cost of insurance. They got a space, a pop-up space. I mean, the short of it is that they made a huge success of it. They sold art. And they made themselves a gallery space out of nothing, which I think most of them had thought wasn't possible, and I had thought was going to be an experience in being resilient against failure. They made it a real success. This is some of the art. This is the outside of this kind of rundown MIT-owned building in Central Square, and they're turning a disused community space, a kind of a blighted space in a high-traffic environment, into a really cool one-week cultural attraction. Here's some pictures from the event. This is Dariush, who, besides all the art that he has in the exhibit, also has these cool little LED balloons, and you'll see a picture of them in the night sky. Really cool little cheap to make invention that inspired people. Everyone who saw it said this is an incredible little piece that you've put together. Here's some of them in the night sky. It's not really coming out with this projector, but you can see how having hundreds of these in the night sky would be cool. It was very well attended. As I said, the artists sold. They got their friends to DJ. They got their friends to curate. They got their friends to man the gallery throughout the week. So we actually had enough in contributions through their friend network that they actually employed people to man the gallery. So they had like a little a little business, and in many ways a full business for 9 days. And that's the last picture of the event. This is Mike Falzone. He's a Twitter and Facebook personality and describes what he does as creating YouTube videos that make fun of people on Twitter. That's his passion, right? But irrespective of your passion, he's a great example of the fact that there's a money-making niche for everyone. And his was going up, recording a video every single day, going up on stage every single day, improving oneself, and not just improving one's practice. His practice was recording comedy and getting it out there, but having a daily practice for one's business that sits in parallel with the art. In this case, his business practice was getting more and more exposure, getting more and more networking events in every day, and eventually getting a TweetTap web TV show where he was paid to do this as a host. And his quote was, if you want to get into a house and you're standing outside of a locked door, it's going to be infinitely easier to get into that door if you have 100,000 people with you, even if it's just the case that someone finds the key under the mat. Building our exposure and building our team and realizing that this school is not just a set of classes, but really a family and a huge set of resources, extended resources, friends and family resources, creative resources, is an incredible realization. When you realize you're not just here alone, but you're actually here with a huge aggregate amount of talent, amount of financial wherewithal, future potential. The networking that happens in the college scene is going to be really critical, and I think this class helps people realize that. This is Johnny Cupcakes. He owns Johnny Earl. He owns Johnny Cupcakes, which is a multi-million-dollar fashion and limited edition T-shirt brand in the style of a cupcake shop. So people always go into his shops thinking that it's a cupcake store and it's all shirts under the glass. He, I think, describes himself as someone who had learning disabilities, ADD, and that type of thing as a kid and couldn't be sat down to do one thing. But when he discovered his passion, he couldn't be stopped from doing that thing. And it's through the hard, fun work of doing that passion that he realized he was an expert businessman, an expert artist. And I think that's true for a lot of people who find themselves successful in business. There's a lot of different learning modalities, and I haven't found an example of someone who doesn't fit in a use your artistic passion in order to draw other people in, and lo and behold, there's money at the end of the rainbow system. I haven't found someone who doesn't work in that progression. I think that he's a great example of someone who believes that had he gone through a more concrete, standardized system, he would not have been as successful. And it's through experiential learning and through the kind of school of hard knocks of starting and jumping into his business that he learned the most and made the most out of his personal potential. I think it's also true that people who go through that avenue are the most sought after hires. Irrespective of what college you go to or what grades you get, I think at the end, someone looks at your portfolio, they look at your projects, and they want to know what you can do. And I think the disconnect, as someone who hires actively, and we're always hiring, and we're always expanding, as someone who hires, I can tell you the disconnect between what students learn and what they can actually do is enormous. It's expansive. I just don't understand how someone can go to school for 4 years and not actually show anything they've done. And an art education is the opposite of that. I made this, and I popped this up, and I worked with others in this way, and here's the outcomes, and here's the failures, and here's how I learned from them. And all of those trick questions you get in an interview that are like, describe your most terrifying failure, that you're supposed to say, well, the thing that sucks about me is that I'm amazing at everything, right? But artists actually have real answers to that kind of thing. Well, in sophomore year, we tried to think big, and we did it this way, but we learned we should have done it this way. And when we came out the next time, we did it that way, and lo and behold, we made money. Okay, well, that's a real answer. I want to hire that person. And I think that, I think that it's true that whether or not you end up being someone who wants to drive their own business and take those risks and put your 10 years in and all of those, the road to success is pretty steep and pretty long in any industry and in any role. But even for the people who don't want to start their own businesses, I think that this type of business education makes you a great hire. That might be it. That's it for me.